So, with the NFL season approaching week number 6, we're pretty much a third of the way throughout the regular season, and I wanted to give you guys the most disappointing NFL teams here in 2025. Some of these teams didn't really have high expectations going into the year, but man, they are just not getting their feet off the ground whatsoever, and everything is just crashing down. And some teams maybe had Super Bowl expectations this year, and they may not even make the playoffs. So, today we're going to go through about 8 different teams that I think have been disappointing in some way, shape, or form in 2025. So, the first team I have to talk about, maybe the most disappointing team in the NFL season this year, the Baltimore Ravens. When I just said that these teams maybe had Super Bowl expectations going into the year and they may not even make the playoffs. Yeah, I was pretty much just talking about the Baltimore Ravens, who are 1-4 to start off the 2025 season. And this could be like their 2024, like San Francisco 49ers year, where just everything comes crashing down. In week number 1, we all thought they were going to beat the Buffalo Bills, and they had a bad fourth quarter choke job. Derrick Henry had his only good game of the season in week number 1, and they lost to Buffalo. Hey, on the road, Buffalo's also a Super Bowl contender as well. No shame in losing, just week 1 to Buffalo, right? And then week number 2, they take care of the Browns. It was a little shaky in the first half, but they got things done. All right, that's what you're supposed to do when you're the Baltimore Ravens. And then week number 3, they lose 38-30 to the Detroit Lions, a team they've kind of owned over the last few years, and they were a large favorite in this game as well. Then they get blown out by the Chiefs by 17 in week number 4, losing 37-20, and then it was maybe their most embarrassing game in a while, losing 44-10 to the Houston Texans. They were slight favorites in this game as well, just because they were at home, but they didn't have Lamar Jackson in that game. And yeah, we're sitting here 1-4 this year. They have the Rams this Sunday, and Lamar Jackson's most likely not going to play. Then they have the bye week, so they should get a little bit healthier after this game against the Rams, which they can easily lose and be 1-5 on the season. The elite, like all-time iconic Baltimore Ravens defense in 2000 allowed 209 yards rushing through its first 5 games. This year, the Ravens have allowed 732 yards. The defense is just getting torn apart, specifically the run defense, and it's because Nnamdi Madubuike is going to be out for the year with a scary neck injury, and who knows if he's going to be the same, and he's the heart and soul of that defensive line. Roquan Smith, Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Hamilton, or Darius Washington. So many Baltimore Ravens have had injuries throughout the year on the defensive side of the field, and that's why it's just kind of all going south right now, allowing 41 points to the Bills in week number 1, 30 points to the Lions in week number 3, 37 to the Chiefs. The non-existent offense from the Chiefs scored 37 points on you in week number 4, and then 44 points against the Houston Texans in week number 5. They're not getting any pass rush right now. Kyle Van Noy is getting up there in age. Ronnie Stanley has also missed some time as well, and outside of Tyler Linderbaum, he's probably the most important offensive lineman on this team, maybe the most important offensive lineman protecting Lamar Jackson on the exterior. They're not really utilizing DeAndre Hopkins or any secondary receivers of this unit, and I'm just not sure what's going on with Derrick Henry, man, because the start off the season, he was unreal against the Buffalo Bills. 18 carries, 169 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Yes, he did fumble in that game, late in the game, that basically costed them. Week number 2, 23 yards against, a good defense of the Cleveland Browns. 50 yards in week number 3 against the Lions. He also fumbled in both those games as well. 42 yards on 8 carries against the Chiefs, and then 33 yards and a touchdown in week number 5 against the Texans. Now, some of these games they've had to throw the ball a ton, but they haven't really even featured Derrick Henry on third downs and like third and shorts, which is just mind-blowing. But it really comes down to injuries, right? Like, you look at that week 5 injury report, no Lamar, Hamilton, Madubuike, Stanley, Roquan Smith, Marlon Humphrey, like those are the Baltimore Ravens. Those are basically like the 6 most important guys on the team. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how Lamar looks recovering from this hamstring injury, because when he's on, he's maybe the best player in the NFL and the best quarterback in the league. They just traded Odafe Owe to the LA Chargers. The pass rush also just wasn't great, like I said, so far this year. Who knows, like they could end up being 1-5 after this week to the LA Rams. Maybe they pull out a victory. Odds are that's not going to happen, given that they're 7.5-point underdogs in this game at home. It's the season from hell for the Baltimore Ravens. Next up, I want to talk about a team in the AFC West. It won't be the last team I talk about in the AFC West. Yeah, I want to talk about the Las Vegas Raiders, who are 1-4 to start off the season, like the Baltimore Ravens. And this was supposed to be just a new era of Las Vegas Raiders football, right? You bring in Pete Carroll, you bring in Chip Kelly, you bring in Geno Smith this offseason. Tom Brady is a part owner of this team, and they've been one of the more embarrassing teams, especially on offense, to start off this year. And it all comes down to what Geno Smith has been doing in this offense so far here in 2025. You can make an argument he's been the most disappointing quarterback in a vacuum in 2025, more disappointing than somebody like Tua or anybody else here in this league. So far this year, Geno Smith has thrown 9 interceptions. He is just making costly turnovers for the Raiders. They somehow beat the Patriots in week number 1. I actually like them in week number 1 because I liked the Raiders a lot more going into this year than I do right now. Then they have one of the worst offensive performances in week number 2 against a division rival in the LA Chargers. They lose 20-9. Geno throws 3 interceptions in that game. They lose by 17 to Marcus Mariota and the Washington Commanders in week number 3, giving up 41 points to Mariota in that game. Then they lose in heartbreaking fashion to the Chicago Bears, a game they definitely could have won in week number 4. They lose by 1 point. And then week number 5, they somehow top that offensive performance that was so bad in week number 2 in week number 5 against the Indianapolis Colts. They end up losing 40-6 in this one. Geno throws for 2 interceptions. The offensive line is just getting overmatched every single week, and you can make an argument this is the worst offensive line unit in the NFL right now, especially with Colton Miller getting hurt. Brock Bowers has pretty much been hurt all year and trying to play through an injury. He didn't play in week number 5, who's supposed to be one of the more versatile tight ends and receiving options in the NFL. And with the depleted offensive line and just blocking from the tight ends, Ashton Jeanty has been somewhat disappointing this year. It's not his fault. They moved Jackson Powers-Johnson from center to right guard. They have Jordan Meredith at center right now, but Alex Kappa, Dylan Parham, DJ Glaze have all not really been succeeding this year as a collective unit. That could come down on coaching. That could just come down on the front office for not investing more in the offensive line this offseason. I also thought that the Raiders needed to work more on their secondary. They didn't really address that too much. Thank God they drafted Darian Porter, who's been fine this year in a limited number of snaps, but you're watching just inconsistent play from the secondary. Jamal Adams has been like a rotational linebacker and has been one of the bright spots of this team right now. Max Crosby has been getting to the quarterback, but nobody really else has on this defensive line. Maybe they would like for Tyree Wilson to be a little bit better. And obviously things went completely south with Christian Wilkins, who they signed in the 2024 offseason, and he only made it 1 year as a Raider. Now you could compare Pete Carroll's slow start with like USC in 2001, where they were 1-4 to start off the year before eventually winning a national title in Southern California. But this is different. This is basically 25 years later, and this is the National Football League. The Seattle Seahawks were 3-2 through Pete Carroll's first 5 games, but then they had some generational draft classes incoming after that. I don't know if that's going to be the same here in Las Vegas. They've definitely been one of the more disappointing teams in the AFC to start off the year because we thought it was going to be a little bit different in Vegas. So I'm kind of going to do a dual nomination here for my third team that I'm going to talk about. So we're going to talk about 9 teams here in this video. I want to briefly talk about these 2 teams who I think are going to be fine by the end of the season. One of these teams is actually 4-1, but I just feel like the offense has been really disappointing. So we'll start off with the Eagles offense. Yeah, the 4-1 Eagles, who are a couple plays away from being 5-0 at this point. But man, the vibes do not feel like it should be for a 4-1 team right now. This Eagles offense, which has a very good offensive line that has its injuries right now, but Jalen Hurts at quarterback, Saquon Barkley at running back, arguably the best running back in the NFL, AJ Brown and Devonta Smith out wide, Dallas Goedert, a serviceable tight end. It's currently ranked 17th in EPA per play in 2025. This is a team that just won the Super Bowl last year that has so much talent on the offensive unit. I know they lost Kellen Moore, who is now the head coach over there in New Orleans, but they're currently 30th in yards per game offensively, 29 in yards per play, 24th in yards per pass attempt, 29th in yards per rush with Saquon Barkley in the backfield after the historic season he had in 2024. They're ranked 26th in explosive plays and 29th in explosive pass percentage. And you've heard kind of the rumblings in the locker room as well that Devonta Smith is unhappy with his target share. Same with AJ Brown, who had a miscommunication maybe with Jalen Hurts against the Denver Broncos, where he kind of stopped running on that deep ball, which looked like a pretty solid pass from Jalen Hurts. I mean, they did put up 33 points against the Rams, 31 points against the Buccaneers. Some of that has been special teams or defensive oriented. And then they put up 17 points, you know what, against a solid Denver Broncos defense. Maybe things are going to get right against the New York Giants Thursday night. But yeah, the vibes just feel off in Philadelphia. And then I want to briefly talk about the Kansas City Chiefs as well, just because they are 2-3 to start off the year. They lose week 1 to the LA Chargers in Brazil. Brazil game week 1, kind of weird. Xavier Worthy gets hurt on one of the first plays of the game. Then in week number 2, they lose to the Philadelphia Eagles. Hey, the Eagles are still a good team objectively. They just won the Super Bowl. No shame in that. They beat the Giants by 13. Wasn't the most convincing 13-point victory, but they got it done on Sunday night. And then they beat the Ravens by 17. I don't know if that's still like an impressive win given how bad the Ravens have overall looked this year. And then they ended up losing by 3 to the Jaguars on Monday night. That game was just ridiculous. So many times the Chiefs could have won that game, but also times they could have lost that game. Patrick Mahomes basically throws a 100-yard pick six to Devin Lloyd. Trevor Lawrence falls down, then gets up and is able to win the game. Chris Jones kind of stops playing on that game as well, or in that play specifically. I feel like this team can definitely change its course once Rashee Rice comes back, which is about to happen. Xavier Worthy is back fully healthy, and now you don't have to rely so much on Travis Kelce, who may look like he's going to hang it up very soon. I would like for them to actually trade for a more explosive running back. Like, Kareem Hunt is fine. Isaiah Pacheco does not look like the same player he did before the injury last year. And anything in between the tackles, they are not highly ranked in EPA per rush. So maybe this team ends up making a trade. They still have great defensive playmakers with Bolton, McDuffie, Karlaftis, Brian Cook. They definitely need Chris Jones to play better. They definitely need Travis Kelce to play better as well. Maybe Rashee Rice changes this season's course, but yeah, 2-3, disappointing start for a team that's always in Super Bowl conversations every year because of their quarterback. So the Cincinnati Bengals just traded for Joe Flacco to save their season. I have to put them here, even though they are 2-3. They're very happy that they were able to beat the Browns in week number 1, a game they almost lost with Joe Burrow. And then they beat the Jaguars in a game which Joe Burrow gets hurt in, 31-27, a game they could have lost like week number 1. And then Jake Browning officially starts in week number 3, and they have one of the more embarrassing losses of the season. They lose by 38 to the Minnesota Vikings. Then they lose by 25 on Monday night to the Denver Broncos. Then they lose by 13 to the Detroit Lions, where the offense looked better in this game, but it still wasn't convincing, at least for the Cincinnati Bengals front office, because they go out and trade for Joe Flacco. Chase Brown has been one of the more disappointing running backs this season, and they're ranked 32nd in offense right now as a collective unit. Joe Burrow is most likely going to come back in December, but we knew that this offensive line was not suited to at least be somewhat of a playoff team this year, and that was going to eventually be their downfall. That's maybe not the reason why Joe Burrow got hurt, but hey, they haven't really invested in this offensive line as much as you would have liked when you have a franchise superstar quarterback in Joe Burrow who led every single passing statistic in 2024, and you guys still couldn't get into the playoffs. These guys are just rotating veterans out there that haven't been proven. Orlando Brown has not been playing well this year. Amarius Mims, a former first rounder, has been somewhat disappointing as well. So you'd be like, okay, you don't have a great offensive line. Maybe you have a solid defense. No, this defensive unit is also one of the worst units in the NFL. They have few bright spots. Oren Burks looks like a good pickup. Trey Hendrickson is great, but who knows if Trey Hendrickson is going to even be on this team after the year, because you're paying so much money to Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, which I'm fine with that, but you got to draft well, and they haven't drafted well. Myles Murphy hasn't really lived up to the hype of a first rounder. I talked about Amarius Mims. Shamar Stewart has only played 66 snaps this year, and it's not like the secondary is great either. Hey, they definitely missed Jesse Bates and players like that. So the Bengals got to be one of the more disappointing teams. I mean, their season just cratered once Joe Burrow got hurt. If Joe Flacco can keep them around 500 in December, maybe they can sneak in as like a 7 seed, but right now they got to be one of the more disappointing teams in the NFL. All right, so I want to talk about the New York Jets, because the moment I'm recording this, the Jets have still not won a game in 2025. They're the only team winless. They are 0-5. Aaron Glenn is still looking for his first win. And I just don't want to like harp on the Jets anymore. I know a lot of Jets fans, and I feel bad for them. We share the same love for an MLB team. I'm a Mets fan. A lot of Mets fans are Jets fans. And I don't know what can change, man, for this team. They go through head coach after head coach, quarterback after quarterback, and nothing can click for this collective unit. Now, the Cowboys have a good offense. Losing to them by 15 at home stinks, and you were already 0-4, but they lost to the Steelers by 2 in week number 1. They lost to the Bucks by 2 in week number 3, and they lost by 6 to the Dolphins in week number 4. Those are 3 potential winnable games, and they won 0 of them. Now, I don't know if that comes back on the game plan, the offensive game plan, the defensive game plan, maybe the head coach in general, where you allowed Baker Mayfield to have a game-winning drive. You allowed Chris Boswell to hit a game-winning field goal, and you scored too little too late against the Miami Dolphins, who we're going to get to in this video, don't you worry. And the Jets defense has also been pretty abysmal this year as well. That could come back on the front 7. I thought like some players in the secondary have been playing all right this year, but once again, as a collective unit, they've not been great. I think individual offensive linemen have had their moments this year, but as a collective unit, it hasn't been great. You still have an explosive running back in Breece Hall. You still have a wide receiver 1 talent in Garrett Wilson. I mean, Justin Fields hasn't been great this year, but I don't think he's really been like a bottom 3 or 4 quarterback in the NFL. I think he's been fine enough to win you at least one game through your first 5. They have the Broncos this week, 9:30 game in London. Maybe they end up winning that one just because it's a weird European game. I mean, last year they ended up losing to the Broncos when kind of the roles were reversed from those two teams. Then they end up having the Carolina Panthers on October 19th. Maybe that's their first win as well. I did not think the Jets were going to be the last winless team this year. I didn't think they were going to be great. I did think that they were going to finish with like a bottom 3 or 4 record in the AFC. I didn't think it was going to be this bad. And Aaron Glenn, who's a defensive-minded coach, has not fielded out a good defense. Once again, that can come back on the front office, but overall, the Jets have been very disappointing. You know what? I just mentioned them briefly. The Miami Dolphins are disappointing, man. They're 1-4 to start off the year. And you want to talk about bad defensive units, that's what the Miami Dolphins have right here. They gave up 33 points to Daniel Jones in week number 1 against the Indianapolis Colts, 33 points against the Patriots in week number 2, 31 in week 3 against the Bills, 21 points to the Jets in week number 4, and then 27 points to the Carolina Panthers in week number 5. Now, hey, some of those losses could have gone differently, right? You could have ended up beating the Patriots, you could have beat the Panthers, and then we're looking at a 3-2 season right now, but we're not. Kenneth Grant has not been playing great so far through his first 5 games. Hey, it's just 5 games. He may be fine. But you guys have a premier pass rush that you've invested into. Chop Robinson has not been great this year after a promising rookie season. Bradley Chubb has not been great this year. Jalen Phillips has not been great this year either. So now you have no pass rush, no run defense. And it's not like the secondary is great either. Rasul Douglas has probably been your best player overall on that defensive unit, but you traded away Jalen Ramsey. Minka is great, but Jack Jones is getting torched. Ashton Davis hasn't been living up to expectations. And Jordan Brooks is leading the NFL in tackles. And sometimes that's not a good thing because your defensive line unit has been really bad. When you usually look at the top tackle getters defensively in the NFL, they have bad defensive lines, and now everything's got to come back on the linebackers, which is never a recipe for success. The offensive line also not great either. Something they've kind of rushed to the side. Now, like Patrick Paul has been fine this year, but it's a lot of hodgepodge of names. Aaron Brewer has been fine as well. They lose Tyreek Hill for the year, but it's somebody that didn't even really want to be there. Tua's been disappointing for his contract this year, especially what him and Mike McDaniel were a few years ago. I have no idea what this Dolphins team is going to look like in 4 weeks. Is Mike McDaniel still going to be coaching this team? What are they going to look like next year? Is Tyreek going to be on this team? Is Tua going to be on this team? Are they going to have to enter into another rebuild when we thought a couple years ago, Mike McDaniel, Tua, Tyreek, like this was the new Miami Dolphins. They could rival the Bills and win the AFC East. They choked that season. They haven't been as good since. And now they're one of the more disappointing teams in 2025. You know, I'm going to say the Arizona Cardinals have been disappointing this year as well. A lot of people thought they could be a sneaky playoff team coming out of the NFC West. They have Kyler Murray as your quarterback. They have year 2 Marvin Harrison Jr., who should be better from his rookie year, one of the best tight ends in the game. They spent a lot of money and draft capital in the offseason on the defensive unit. Then they beat the Saints and the Panthers in the first 2 weeks. And I was not convinced about this team, especially the way they beat those 2 teams. And no disrespect to them, but they aren't some of the best teams in the NFL. Then they lose to Mac Jones and the 49ers by 1 point, a winnable game. They lose by 3 to the Seattle Seahawks. Then they lose by 1 to the Tennessee Titans. And oh my God, an absolute choke job. Now, I will say for the Cardinals here, they could still be fine. Like, you look at their 3 losses, and it's a collective 5 points. In 3 games, they definitely could have won. It was too little too late against the Seattle Seahawks, and they had that kickoff blunder, but they definitely could have beaten the Titans, definitely could have beaten the San Francisco 49ers. And I know their fan base wants to just get rid of Drew Petzing in this offensive unit because it should be better than this. Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride should be better than what they are offensively this year, and they've been a bottom 10 team in most offensive statistics in 2025. The offensive line has also been inconsistent, which kind of comes down on a lot of disappointing teams. It's your offensive line unit not really showing up. Will Johnson, man, he's looking the part for somebody that was drafted in the 2nd round in 2025. Josh Sweat has been good. Zaven Collins has been good as well. Calais Campbell at his age is still playing good. I think this team has way too much talent to be 2-3, and maybe that just comes back on coaching. I know DeMercado dropped the ball in the end zone against the Panthers. We've seen that way too many times this year. I think the Cardinals have been disappointing, all things considered. And the last team I want to talk about as well, the New York Giants. The New York Giants are 1-4, and I think their fan base, kind of like the Jets here, is just defeated, man. Every time they get sucked in, they get a little bit of hope. It's just another retooling, rebuilding year. They get blown out by the Commanders in week number 1, a game they probably should have won in week number 2 against the Cowboys, where Russ played well, then kind of blows it late in the game. They have to bench Russ after his week 3 performance against the Niners. Jackson Dart beats the Chargers for the Chargers' first loss of the year. Then they lose to the Saints, a team they should also beat. So the Giants are now 1-4. They're taking on the Eagles tonight. The odds of them winning are not great. And hey, this could age poorly if the Giants do win and advance to 2-4 this year. But is like Brian Dable going to be here next year? Is Joe Shane going to be here next year? Is the new regime, if there is one, going to like Jackson Dart, who they just spent a 1st round pick on? Now, there's plenty of players to like on this Giants unit. Cam Scatterbo looks like a long-term answer at the running back position. I know it sucks that Malik Neighbors got hurt, but he's a legitimate wide receiver 1 when he comes back. I'm not worried about his recovery at all. Andrew Thomas is an elite offensive tackle. You have Dexter Lawrence, maybe the best defensive tackle in the NFL. You just drafted Abdul Carter, who I still think is going to be a great edge rusher in this league. Brian Burns has been fantastic this year for the Giants. So it's really the secondary and the offensive line That should come down on Joe Shane. Maybe it doesn't come down on Brian Dable. But the Giants also lose so many heartbreaking games, which could just come down to coaching, like I said before. And the Giants are going to be the last team we're going to talk about. So we mentioned the Ravens. We briefly talked about the Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles, just offense as a whole. The Bengals, the Jets, the Dolphins, Raiders, Cardinals, and New York Giants. Let me know if you agree or disagree with anything I said down below. Drop a thumbs up if you guys did enjoy. Subscribe for more NFL content like this throughout the season. Catch y'all on the next one. Peace.